Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Thursday. And if you went out of your way to like, comment, or subscribe, that helps me and the channel out a lot. So thank you. All right, so anytime a new technique or a new bait comes out, and that technique or bait fit the situation where you have a bunch of pressured fish, it is the ultimate trump card. I did a video yesterday talking about if you have a bait that the fish will bite when they won't bite anything else. It's the most fulfilling thing that will ever happen to you in fishing. And that typically happens when new baits are invented and they're not just gimmicks. Now, fishing's full of gimmicks. I talked about this yesterday as well, that fishing is a house of mirrors, not only for the bass, but also for the fishermen. We are constantly being thrown stuff that is junk. It'll never work. It's a gimmick. And there's a lot of things that will work, but until you make them work, they are a gimmick. And what I mean by that is if you don't have the right situation in your lake, then a bait that is brand new that the fish have never seen, it's not really gonna help you at all. And that's a lot of the times what happens is a bait comes out, it's brand new, and it may have been invented in South Carolina and it started working in Florida. Never really caught on, took off, whatever you want to call it, in South Carolina, but it was the deal in Florida. Then it became this bait that happened to work in every grass lake rather. And that's the chatterbait. And this was a bait that was invented in South Carolina. It first got put on the map on Lake Okeechobee. Then it was used in the Classic on the Kissimmee chain, and now everyone uses it anytime there's a blade of grass in a lake. It's the greatest grass fishing bait of all time. And there's been other baits like the horny toad. I was around when that was invented in 2005. And it was one of those things. Hay grass where you couldn't get a buzz bait through. You really couldn't fish anything on top through it. You could now fish a bait through it. So you had a bunch of pressured fish that have seen a bunch of Texas rigs rather dropped on them. Now you could fish a buzz bait, soft plastic buzz bait, right over the top of the fish. And they'd never seen anything like that, and there were a ton of fish. And how this becomes a thing is fish that become pressured, and typically lakes that have a bunch of cover, you're going to see these baits really take off. So the hybrid hunter, for instance, it's kind of been labeled a grass fishing bait, and it's going to be one of the next big deals in fishing if people can learn how to make it work. So, not saying that it is necessarily going to take off. I could see it, but it may take a while because it's big, it's hard to throw, it's hard to catch fish on. You really got to learn how to use it. And I think if people do, it will be a big deal, but maybe it won't because it takes a lot of work, you know, and people don't necessarily have that much time to do that. But if you have a situation where you have a bunch of pressure fish, and let's just hypothetically throw out grass lakes, because grass lakes, there's plenty of cover, plenty of housing for the fish. You have an extra level to the food chain. So there's so many positives come with lakes that have a ton of cover. The negatives are they have a lot of places to hide. And if every bass on the lake has a place to hide and they've seen a million baits, then they can hunker down and not bite anything. So back to my point, when you come out with a magic bait that fits that situation, you can go to these places when they would not bite anything else, and you can catch them. And here's the deal. Anytime you have a lake that, let's say, is overpopulated, you have fish, grass lake, for instance, we'll hypothetically throw this out there. A grass lake, when it's overpopulated, there will be a 3.5 to 5 pound bass on every point and in every drain. So those fish are all catchable with a chatterbait. This is an overpopulated lake. Every point and drain you go to with a chatterbait on a day that has suitable conditions, you'll catch a 3.5 to 5 pounder. If the lake is just at normal, you can go there and every point and every drain you can catch a 2 pounder. In the really good spots, you can catch a 3.5 to 5 pounder. And when the lake is on a down swing, fishing's not so good, it's below average for that lake, you can go to all places and not catch anything, but only on the good spots. And those spots most likely are going to have a 2 pounder or 3.5 to 5 pounder, but most spots aren't going to have anything. Now, that's what's catchable with a bait that the fish have already seen. You know, the fish that are pressured, that's what's catchable with your chatterbait. But you can go there with a bait like a hybrid hunter that the fish have not seen and go and catch fish on all those spots, because the fish are still there. You know, that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. When fishing gets really tough, it's a fish or a group of fish or a year class of fish that has just seen a lot of baits, and there's a gap there. There's not a lot of 2-pounders for some reason that are catchable. The 2-pounders are typically the easiest bass to catch. The keeper size bass, the easiest ones to catch are the 2-pounders. And if you don't have those, then you're really fishing for the smarter, wiser fish, and they're not going to continue to bite a chatterbait if they've already been caught on a chatterbait. So that's when a new bait, like a horny toad, like a chatterbait, you know, back in 2007, or like a hybrid hunter nowadays, when you throw that on those spots, it's changing everything. The conditions might not even have to be right. If you learn how to fish it, and it's not a gimmick, and it may still be a gimmick if you don't learn how to do it. It's like the weight loss program where it works if you can eat the meals that they send you and still maintain your happiness and not go crazy and be sad and fit the program and stay with the program, then it'll work. But if you eat the food, you hate it, you're hungry all the time, you're miserable, then it's a gimmick. It's not going to work for you. And that's the same thing with fishing lures. If you can figure out how to use it and it's not a piece of junk, you can have really amazing days on the water. The most fulfilling days you ever will have bass fishing. So try those new baits. I'm not saying they're all going to work. I'm not saying they're all going to be staples in the game, but when a new one does come out, it's very important to at least give it a shot and try to make it work for you and try to make it work for the scenarios that you have on your lake. So good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.